Hey, y'all. It is Jasmine Haley, and we are here again for another amazing episode of the Legacy Speaker Show. And today's guest is Stephanie Moon. Now, let me explain to you why we've invited her to this podcast. She has led campaigns for New York Times bestsellers, securing partnerships with brands like the San Francisco Public Library, and securing coverage in Oprah's coveted holiday favorite things list. Yes, the Queen Oprah. Stephanie has dreamed up and then executed plans for authors to get their work into readers' hands. And over the 12 plus years working at traditional publishers, okay, we got an insider here, y'all. Stephanie noticed a trend. Authors who had spent years researching and writing their book did little to nothing to market their book. Oh my goodness. I feel like they're telling on me right now. Stephanie knew she had to change this and build her business around empowering authors to feel confident in sharing their story and expertise in being seen. And for many of you who are utilizing the power of your voice to share your message, to create impact, to grow your legacy, we know many of you are also looking at doing it through the written word. And so, welcome to the show, Stephanie. We cannot wait to dive in.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation.
Oh, me too. When we connected, we had such a great conversation, and I was like, I need to have this amazing, brilliant woman on this podcast because the work that you do is essential. Now, many listeners know that I wrote my first book a few years ago. I'm actually writing a second edition, and I didn't put it forth enough effort for marketing, but I also was not supported in a way I should have been. You know, I didn't have a Stephanie Moon on my team, right? So I would just love to know, like, what kind of led you into the work of traditional publishing? Because we see what's led from your bio into
Mhm,
helping people like myself,
mhm.
but what led you to traditional publishing?
Good question. As a kid, always loved books, loved going to the library. We would go on road trips. I would read in the back of the minivan. And when I graduated many, many years ago, I am from the San Francisco Bay Area. So this was like the home of tech. A lot of my friends started working at Google and at software places. And I was like, I just didn't get it. I was like, how am I supposed to market something that's just like doesn't physically exist, right? It was just like, okay, Google was like at that time a search engine. And I wanted to just work in books. I was like, that would be so amazing. So I found a publisher in the Bay Area and just started working for them. And they were actually a part of Scholastic, which is the hugest children's book publisher in the world, I think in the world. And then have just continued along since then.
Yes. Listen, my favorite thing was getting that Scholastic book or those few pages. Boy, I've gotten in trouble because I was a huge reader
Yes.
and I
Those,
would get things I wasn't supposed to get.
those little
I don't know what they
book
call them, pamphlets or
those
something like that.
book club things are
Yes.
I loved those. They still send them out. And it was
Yeah.
like that book club flyer is such an
Mhm.
amazing place to be as a children's author because you can sell thousands and thousands of books because their goal with that is to get in at like low affordable prices for people to read more, for kids to read more. And they do an amazing job because books that like a picture book is normally $17, right? So $16.99, $17.99, but they sell it there for probably less than $5. So it's like makes it really affordable for people to kids to start loving to read.
Oh my word. Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, just thinking now of my own kids with their Scholastic Fair, I was more excited than them to
Yes.
go through. I was such a geek, okay?
Yes.
Babysitters Club. I had like every single book. I mean, like you can imagine. So I
Yes.
already know that looking at that just now as a business owner and seeing how they even marketed for children,
Mhm.
how they were strategic even in that, just
Yeah.
shows how much we need to be for our own book.
Yes. And I think this is the thing. You wrote your book. Congratulations. I think what a lot of self published authors don't really realize is that as a self published author, you're the boss, right? You choose the cover, you choose the designer, you choose everything, you choose the timeline, you choose the price. But that also means you're the boss of sales and marketing, right? You can't just expect to load it on Amazon and like people will come. Amazon is such a complex, crazy place. Algorithms that like nobody at Amazon can tell you about, like, oh, this is going to help you a lot. Everything is very anecdotal, even for big publishers. And as a self-published author, just like that sales and marketing piece is as important as the writing piece. But I think that people don't think of it that way. I think a lot of self-published authors are like, I'm a writer, I'm not a marketer. And I'm like, okay, you can be writing as a hobby, or you can be writing to get your message and story out and and then to make money. It's kind of, if you want to have your story out there, you got to sell it.
And you know what I really love about what you just said is that you mentioned self-publishing, but you work with people who are traditionally published as well.
Yes.
And primarily, right?
Yeah.
And I want to really make this super clear, y'all. It doesn't matter if you go to traditional route or self-publishing route, you still have an active part in the marketing of your book.
Correct. 100%. And as like the world changes and the online space changes and social media changes, like even people who are publishing with traditional publishers still need to have a platform. They still need to know how to talk to their audience and sell their book. And it's becoming more and more and more important that that authors can do this. Any author.
Absolutely. And for those of us who are self-published, and I didn't know this, and you can add to this if you want to. I didn't know that even as someone that's self-published is considering traditional publishing at some point in time, I need to pay attention to how well I'm marketing my self-published books and how much are being sold. Because one of the things that they're going to be asking you when you're in the traditional publishing world is, how many did you sell? Because they want to know, are you too much of a risk to take on?
Absolutely, yes. So they can, a publisher can see how many books were sold. And then also they want to be investing their money, like paying you your advance on somebody that knows how to sell books. Because I think there's also so many good books written out there, but it's also how are they getting out there, right? And I think the author has to be able to know who their book is for. So like when I talk to authors and they have trouble really talking about who their book is for, my heart just breaks open a little bit for them, because the thing is, authors are the best salesperson for their book, right? And they should know their audience the best. And I think a lot of times authors want to think their book is for everyone, but it's not, because you can't be, we know this, like in business, you can't be for everybody, right? And the more specific you can be, the better chance you'll have at really succeeding in the marketing. Because like, so for instance, like I'm working on a lot of cookbooks right now. You can't be for every cook. There's so many different ways to cook. There's so many different like cultures you can cook from, so many different techniques, all of that kind of stuff. But once you kind of hone it down, you can really speak to that person, that very, very specific person, and then your marketing will feel like they're speaking right to that person, and then they'll want to buy your book. And then if your book is good, they'll want to share with everybody.
Yeah. So let me ask you, when should we even be considering a marketing strategy for a book? Like, when does that happen? Like, once it's published? I know the answer to this, but we need to know. We need to listen to this and realize, like, this is serious business. So when does that even begin?
Now. So if you are even thinking about writing a book, right? And so I think this is something for me, even as like a service provider, I need to be changing in my verbiage. I think saying book marketing, people are only thinking about the physical book, right? Like the book that you're selling, like the cover, the blurbs, etc. But really part of book marketing is your author platform. And your author platform is the thing that takes the longest to build and to build trust with your audience, right? So you have to start doing that right away, because the thing is, the publishing process is really long. Like I would say traditional publishing is at least 18 months, right? So
wow,
that's on the short end, right? And so you want to be you want to have that author platform being built now, because it takes so much time. Just think about your own social media habits, right? Like if you're looking at social media, what else are you doing? You're like in line at the grocery store, pick up, watching TV, doing whatever, right? And so
distracted.
You need so many different instances of seeing somebody. and then building
Ooh,
trust
that's
with
so
them,
good.
right? It's just you need to be constantly in front of people, and not in a way that feels like icky or like in your face, but just you need to give people an opportunity to get to know you, you know? I was
Yeah.
just talking to a client, and she's a very private, and I said, that's fine. I understand you want to keep your privacy, you know, of course, like don't show the front of your house, all that kind of stuff, right? But it's more about too giving people something to relate to. How are
Mm-hmm.
you personable, right? How are you different than every other author that's out there? And the only way you can kind of distinguish yourself is if you give people an opportunity to get to know you.
Yes. So, one of the things that I really want to emphasize for most people who come into my world, who come into my community, there's this grappling journey that happens where they have to come to terms with, to be a business owner, you can still have your privacy, but you got to get visible.
Yes. Yes.
Visibility never ends.
Yes. Because the for authors, being visible, I think, is also something they struggle with, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times they're creators, right? So
Mhm.
they're thinking, I'm just a creator. I'm developing this recipe. I'm developing this framework. I'm developing whatever. But
Mhm.
the thing is, if you want people to use it, people have to know about it, you know? So I think,
Mhm.
like, in the past, when I worked at a publishers, I would work with authors, you know, I would say between 3 and 6 months from when their book came out. And then they would kind of like not really know what to do. And then they wouldn't really do anything. And then I would, you know, try to advise them, but they wouldn't do that much because I think they were just very unsure, right? And I think it's also recognizing that writing a book is very different than marketing a book, right? Being an
Mhm.
author is different than being a marketer. Like, I've been a marketer for
Yeah.
12 plus years, so it feels like easy for me, but I get it, right? But
Mhm.
I would not know how to write a book. Like, if you asked me
Mhm.
to give me an assignment, I would be like, okay, I have to start from scratch. I don't know this process.
Mhm.
But then these authors would, after the book was out, they'd be like, wait, but why is nobody buying my book? And I'm like, it's because nobody knows that you wrote a book.
Mhm.
Like, how many
Mhm.
times have you talked about it on your social? How many events have you been to and said, I'm an author, this is the title of my book? You know, how many times have you just shared with your community that you wrote a book? It's not that your book is bad, because I think that's what authors, like, their first instinct is. They're like, well, my book is like not that good, these other books are better. And it's not that. It's that nobody knows who you are or knows that your book exists.
Mm. That's so good. It's so good. And again, my friends, when we look at bigger named companies, they are almost omnipresent. Now, we're not expecting perfection from us as small business
Mhm,
owners, but we do need a reality check of what it takes to make
mhm,
the sale. And so what I love about, the title of your specific episode, we're talking about what is a good foundation to market your book, is already establishing your platform now.
yes.
And that requires you to be building community, consistently showing up. Don't be worried, y'all, about the number of people who are liking, the number of followers that you have. Just consistently show up with that message, make sure it's aligned. And then, as Stephanie was saying, 3 to 6 months, she's worked with her clients prior to the actual book being released, or maybe even sooner for some of us that may
Mhm,
need it.
mhm,
But again, just like if you're trying to get a stage, and I often talk about this, just like if you're trying to get a stage, you have to prove your market value. And your market value can only be established by creating the assets, right? The
mhm,
consistent content, you taking up space. And so I say often, like, and I've shared this off many times, when I first started out, I couldn't see myself on video. I couldn't hear my voice. I hated the sound of it. I it was just too much. I had my children's face as the image of why I needed to move forward, because I was still working on my own internal worthiness. But at now I'm at a place, by consistently showing up and breaking through that, I can show up for myself consistently and do so in a way that will allow my business to grow while still honoring myself. I'm not
Yes.
pimping myself out.
Yes. Yes.
I'm aligned.
It's that it's that being seen plus building your platform, right? I think it's so easy for us in this age of like TikTok and all of this stuff to think like, oh, somebody is like an overnight success, you know? And it's like, that's very, very few and like far between. People who have really big followings that are really engaged, they are working so diligently and so hard to create the type of content that their audience wants to see, and their audience like rewards them, right, with engaging with their stuff, with pre-ordering their book, you know, writing a review for their book. You know, it's a lot of building a relationship. You know, that's like one thing I really try to emphasize with people that I work with, that it can feel daunting, but once marketing can, but once you start thinking about it like a relationship, you're just trying to build a relationship with one reader at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you take that kind of advice, it won't feel as overwhelming. You won't feel like you need to be for everybody. And then you also can really create content that really resonates with a lot of people because you're
Yeah.
speaking to that one person.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So I'm curious to know, uh, based on your experience, like what would you say, like one or two things, because we know we can't solve the world's problems in 20 minutes, but one or two things of getting your written word or just your brand in the eyes of mega influencers or people of influence in your industry. Because one of the things that are listed in your bio is it talks about the coveted holiday favorite things. Now we already know Queen Oprah, okay?
Right. Right.
You get a seal a deal from her. She's right now there marketing her book club book right now, and I've
Yeah.
been seeing it everywhere. And I can
Yes.
only imagine how the sales have skyrocketed. So that's almost like, you know, when we're looking at growth, we can build our own, but we can also borrow the traffic of
Yes.
someone else.
Yes.
So I would love to know like one or two things that you would say to someone that may be interested in finding a collaborative partner to borrow traffic to get eyes on their written word.
Yeah, love that. So that, like, for instance, Oprah's holiday favorite things list, that's like a publicity aspect, right? So we as a company pitched a bunch of items, right? And one of the ones that I pitched was chosen. And then there's all this stuff that happened on the back end because, as you can imagine, getting chosen for this is also when the magazine was printed every month. Getting on that list, there was so much stuff that had to happen on the back end. Do you have enough stock? Is it allocated for this person? When can you ship it? This is like confidential. Everybody sign an NDA. There's so much stuff happening, right? But I think for people who are starting out or who feel like they have a smaller audience, trying to get in front of people who have bigger audiences, you know, definitely borrowing their audience. It's about, for me, I try to use the example of like, you need to be also providing value. So for instance, when also people don't know how to show up online, I'm like, show up how you want somebody to show up in your audience. So even if your book is not available yet, if you would love somebody in your audience one day to share that they're reading your book, share what you're reading. It doesn't have to be the newest, greatest book. It's just, you have to be putting value out there, right? And it's sharing the books you're reading, sharing the places you're going, you know, sharing other people's works, and not in a way that feels like, oh, every day I just see, you know, Stephanie reposting other people's stuff. But it's more like, where do you have genuine connection to this content creator or influencer? Because I also think that there's so many instances of a person, an author, a publicist, etc., reaching out to a celebrity or somebody who has a lot of followers, and then that person just responds because influencers are people too, you know, like, sure, they
Mm-hmm.
might have a team checking their stuff, but they also check that too. And then I think the other thing is you can't, if you are reaching out to somebody who has a much larger audience than you, your first ask, your first interaction should not be, can you do this for me? You can like, and you would be surprised at how many times I have also heard people say like, oh, I emailed like Ava Chen or I emailed whoever, they didn't respond. And I'm like, okay, that she's probably busy and she has a lot of stuff, but also, have you tried to interact with her before? Have you commented on her stories? Have you shared her stuff? Have you liked her stuff? Have you left comments? Any of that kind of stuff. Because it's easy for people to see that, you know, like I can go right now to my Instagram account and see like, oh, this person, even though they haven't bought anything from me, has like commented and liked all this stuff, right? And people are not going to want to just respond to like a cold pitch if you have not also tried to like get to know them, because they're people, they have lives, they have a lot of stuff going on that's not just shown on social media.
Exactly. And I think for the most part, many of us just want to build relationships. I feel like business is about building genuine relationships.
Yes.
And the best collaborations and partnerships that I've developed for me have always been from relationships.
Yes.
Stephanie and I had a conversation prior, and it was a random conversation. It wasn't like it was planned and I was expecting to have her on the podcast, and we connected. And I'm like, yes, let's get your message out there. Right.
Yeah.
And so now her message is in front of my audience. And so we have to be strategic, but like still genuine and values aligned. We're not being sleazy. It doesn't mean that there are wonderful ways in which you can partner with people to be able to market your work. So I love that. I love that so much.
And I think the other thing too is like building a genuine relationship, you have to be yourself.
That's
you
true.
have to, your personality has to come through. Otherwise, what are people kind of trying to get to know? It's and I think that can also be really hard for people if they're not used to kind of showing a part of themselves online. And it just takes practice. I think once you have done it a couple of times or get used to talking to people, it gets a little less scary and it feels more natural.
Absolutely. So I've got my last question for you.
Okay.
My question to you is, what was the best business advice you've ever been given? It could be related to business as a whole or to being an author.
I think one that has really stuck with me in the past year is that people don't talk about the back end very much. People don't talk about everything that's happening behind the scenes, all the systems, all the processes, all the support. And I really wish people did. I think it can feel, social media and the online world makes it feel like everybody is just like so successful and doing it all on their own. But what you don't really see on the back end is like, oh, they have a team of 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, right? Working. It's just that they're the face. And I think knowing that just helped something in my mind like click, like, oh yeah, getting support is how people kind of grow and scale, right? It's not one person working 23 hours a day, doing their business. It's like, oh, it finally clicked that all those systems and processes make it easier for people to help you so you can do more of what you're best at.
Oh, this is why we connected.
Right?
Because like I tell you, like a lot of people are so enthralled with the glitz and glam and the amazing feeling and endorphins that come in and all those good, chemical feel good chemicals in our brain come in when we impact people from the stage. But there's a whole system behind making that sustainable if you want to do it on repeat. And you can't do it without those systems and support in place. It's not going to be possible to sustain it, or you're going to burn yourself out. So I love that you shared that, because it's such a great reminder of, to be legacy driven, to make an impact, do purpose driven work. You must have a back end to support you in doing that.
Yes.
Love it.
The back end is so important. When I was like, when I first started, I was like, what do you mean? I can just do this. It's okay. And I'm like, nope, now I get it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Now, I want you to let the listeners know where they can find you. And listeners, listen, Stephanie was very generous. She has this Be Seen mini workshops that are completely free for you to tap into and learn. If you know that you're trying to really get to a place where you're using visibility through being an author and marketing it in a smart way, So let the listeners know where they can find you. And for those of you interested in that awesome free asset, check our show notes. So where can they find you, Stephanie?
I'm on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn at stephmoonco.com. And then my website is www.stephmoonco.com.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yeah.
Stephanie, for being on the show. I'm so
Yes.
greatly appreciative of it.
Thank you, Jasmine. This was so fun.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, y'all. So as you are building your own legacy, as you're going out and you're sharing your message, many of you are ready to get to a place where you are ready to take what you're sharing from the stage and create a book. But a huge component of whether or not that's successful, whether you're using it for when you're speaking, whether you're using it as a way to land bigger stages, you have to market it and you have to be strategic with it. And it isn't something that's done overnight. And so this conversation today with Stephanie, it just shows how important it is to have individuals like herself to help you be successful in doing that, because there are so many hats that we have to wear as business owners. There's so many different things that are pulling at us left and right. And to have the support of someone to help you market it, your book, build your author platform so that you're able to make more of an impact, grow your visibility, is a huge asset to anyone that is truly committed to legacy driven work. So I encourage you to make sure you reach out to her. And remember, if you need help with any of your speaking topics or your speaker journey, reach out to us at jasminehaley.com, and we'll see you in our next episode.